The You Can Say That Here podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Employment Tutors. Employment Tutors is your go-to destination when you want to get promoted, become a better leader, or set yourself up for success after college. You can visit employmenttutors.com or receive free access to a live small group coaching session by emailing coach at employmenttutors.com and putting "You Can Say That Here" in the subject line. You can say that here. So welcome back to You Can Say That Here. At the end of last week, we kind of got into a debate about history and religion and other religious philosophies and how they interact with Christianity. So afterwards, Colleen was mad enough to record a 10-minute rebuttal to my argument, and we're just going to go ahead and play that. So that will get the conversation started this week. Thank you for listening.
Hey, Andy, let me interrupt for a minute. I am not a religious scholar. Heck, I have no business being on this podcast. I can't string a cohesive sentence together to save my life. But for whatever reason, a couple months ago, I was driving in my car and I had this overwhelming need to do this and share a message. And the first person that came to my mind was Allison. And as Allison and I were talking on the phone, no sooner did we hang up the phone than you returned a message. And I don't know if it's kismet, coincidence, or if it was God's intervention at that moment, but there was this moment that I felt that we needed to do this and we needed to have conversations about this, not because I thought I was going to change your mind, but because I think that there's a bigger conversation to be had. And as you're debating the beginning of time and dinosaurs and Buddhism, and, we're talking about Noah's Ark, the truth is, I don't know what the truth is. I know that I have these beliefs, and I should probably stop saying we're a little bit wrong and a little bit right. Maybe we're all right. Maybe we're all a bit right. And maybe we're meant to question our higher power. But let me just tell you why you will never, ever, no matter what the argument, shake my faith. And it's not because your arguments don't make sense, but because there's been incidents in my life that other people have witnessed that I can't explain, that in my heart I know are God talking. And we could probably do a whole episode on that. But I want to share, maybe a couple of them will help you see. But when something supernatural crosses this boundary into this new space and says, pay attention, who am I to not listen? And is this podcast supposed to be a way to convert atheists? I really don't believe that. But I believe that maybe we're out here for a greater purpose, and it's to bring people together. And what I love that you did through this podcast was say, let's talk about what we can agree upon. And I'll just give you a little insight into one of several events that really shook my world. I don't even know if I need to do that. Maybe I need to save that. But I'll give you one, because there's been a really full handful of times that other powers were at play and I wasn't. You both know that I was in a really tough relationship, and it wasn't because I wanted to be, but it was because I couldn't find an exit strategy. And I went to 3 attorneys, 2 therapists. And during that time, because this person refused to leave and I would have to lie in order to get him out of my house, I was frozen, and I didn't want to do that to my daughter. Well, I was at wit's end, and I was at a friend's house, and she was telling me this story about a sign from God. And so it was a Saturday morning. We went for breakfast and she's telling me about the sign, and her geraniums lived all through the winter and bloomed at the end of her driveway. And I was just so moved by her story. And then I got in my car and I just couldn't stop crying. It was really uncontrollable crying. And I started talking to God. And for whatever reason, there's two places I always feel closest to God. And one of them has been on the water, and the other one has been when I'm very close to my windshield. And so I started praying. I started asking God for a sign, however crazy that may sound to some of you. And I asked him to have a picture fall off the wall. But then I had all these caveats, as only Colleen could. So it sounds so ridiculous, but I had these caveats. Don't make it a piece of art that I love, like something that Aislinn had created. Don't let it be, glass in it. I didn't want anybody to get hurt on the broken glass. Don't let it fall during the day when somebody could get hurt or the animals could get hurt. Let it fall in the middle of the night, but make sure we all heard it. I kid you not. This is my conversation. This is how I ask for signs in the most ridiculous of ways. And so I get home and my daughter's father is there and he's got an empty picture frame. I'm like, what are you doing? And he was really going through a bad time. I believe, he was suffering from depression, and he was hanging this picture frame above a mantle in a room. He had completely taken all the furniture out of the room and he was hanging this picture. And I'm like, what are you doing? He said, I found this in the closet and it's the same size as the TV I want to hang here. And I'm like, well, please don't leave that up there. And if you do, we have a cat and a dog. Like, please make sure that there's no way that this could fall. Now, he had no idea what I was asking. And sure enough, he had put 2 stacks of books in front of this particular picture frame that were so ridiculous because he thought I was so annoying. And it was almost like this picture frame had to escape Alcatraz to fall. And it was sitting on the mantle with 2 giant stacks of books in front of it. The room that it was sitting in was 16 by 20. It's 20 feet long. And at 2:00 in the morning, there was a really, really loud bang. The minute I heard it, it woke me up in the middle of the night. I knew exactly what it was. It was a picture frame, but it was very clear. It was one bang. My daughter woke up, her father woke up, every animal was in the hallway. Like, what just happened? So even the cat was upstairs when this happened downstairs, and we heard it. And I said, was that just one bang? And he said, yes. I said, what was it? And I said, I think it was a picture frame you put up there. He's like, no way, no way, no way. Sure enough, we go down there. All 3 of us heard one bang, not 5, not a roll, not anything. That picture frame ended up 20 feet away on the complete opposite side of the room, upside down, with one bang. We sat there and we stared incredibly, like, how could this even happen? And I knew this was my sign. I had gotten the sign that I needed. It was an affirmation that I needed to get him out of my house. Well, that's all well and great, right? Like, okay, God, thank you for giving me this affirmation that I need him out of my house. I've been trying to do that for 8 years. And I know this sounds so crazy, this story, but you kind of make excuses for when you ask somebody to leave, why they wouldn't. I offered him money to leave, a lot of money to leave, and he wouldn't. And ultimately that night, I was like, okay, this was my sign. God gave me the sign. So the next morning I was up, I was in the backyard gardening and nobody else was up. And he slept on the couch in the kitchen because that's where he moved the couch from that room into our kitchen. And he was sleeping on the couch. And my daughter, I was out in the garden and I was reflecting on what had happened the night before. And I said, God, please, Lord, I've been trying to get this man out of my house for years and the attorneys couldn't do it. And 2 therapists couldn't do it. I went to my priest. He couldn't help. And all of a sudden, my daughter, I said, I asked God at that moment, I said, please tell me how to do this. And at that moment, my daughter at 7 o'clock in the morning came out into the garden from her house in her pajamas and said, Mommy, I think you need to call Grandma and Grandpa, and they need to help you get Daddy to move out. Never once had I ever mentioned that I did not want him in the house. I never fought in front of her. I never, ever gave her any indication that he shouldn't have been there. There's no way I could have given her any provocation to say those words. And it was those words that changed my life. And that was when my life opened up and I called his parents and they helped me devise a plan because he wouldn't go out willingly. And they knew that when I called, they weren't surprised. They were waiting for the call. They had been praying that I kept giving him another chance. That's one example. I can give you so many other examples that are even more outrageous where God has crossed through to give me a message. There are so many miracles that happen in the world every day. There are so many things that have happened to Jesus, so many miracles that are documented. But whatever we all believe, this is my truth. And I don't believe we're supposed to have all the answers. I believe that we have to trust what we know. And ultimately, I guess we'll all find out one day, right?
So that was powerful and interesting. And the only part of it that I want to react to is I'm not trying to change your belief, Colleen. Your opening statement of, hey, here's why I believe. You sounded like maybe I'm pushing you a little bit, and I'm not. You believe what you believe, and it's a fun conversation to have. So that's all I'm here for. I'm not here to try to change anybody, or maybe I'll learn something about myself along the way too. That's kind of the hope here.
Andy, I think, I love it. And I think I love that you're pushing back because there's this piece that's bringing me closer to God and to the message. So I appreciate it. But, again, I feel like there's this piece of me that now is, I'm on this podcast. There's this responsibility now to, I don't know, protect, defend this almighty being who probably doesn't need my protection.
Yeah, but you're not under attack. I hope that I'm not coming across that way.
No, I love it.
Yeah, and I don't want to come across like I'm trying to shove Jesus down your throat, the same thing. Like, I feel like I want
gross,
to...
Sally. That's gross. Now I can't get that out of my head. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. I feel the same way that you do. I just want to share what I believe, and I do feel strongly about what I believe, but I knew you would challenge me going into this, Andy, and even you, Colleen, sometimes when you're middle of the road. And it's been great, actually. Last week when I was saying, did Jesus speak from the old scriptures, or was this, I can't believe it caught me off guard. And afterwards I listened and I realized, so I'm still learning too, as I go along. And it's great for me as well.
I want to go back a little, and we talked about doing this in the beginning, but, I want to apologize to Joe Rogan fans. And Andy, our conversation last week, really, it was kind of funny. I left them like, you know what? I listened to one episode and I listened to a myriad of clips that were obviously controversial because they wouldn't have been made into clips, right? And I came up with this judgment of who this person was based on that. And so I went back and listened. And so thank you, because I think these are the conversations that they challenge our beliefs, they push us forward and make us look at things a little differently, but also they kind of say, hey, dummy, you might not have all the right information here. So go get it before you open your mouth.
Well, there's thousands of hours of Joe Rogan talking and video, and you could be fairly confident that that's actually him. Those are actually his opinions. Those are actually his thoughts. And if you followed him from early on, you'd see the, his development, like as a thinker. He always says he's a meathead, he's a dumb guy, but he's not. He's quite bright and articulate beyond compare. I mean, the guy's just amazing at what he does. There's a reason he has so many listeners. So,
well, as I said, he makes this podcasting thing look easy.
Yeah, but unlike Jesus, we have thousands of hours of what he says, and we can look at him as a person and say, okay, this is who he is. Don't roll your eyes at me.
I am rolling
People
my
at
eyes
home-
at you. We have thousands and thousands of pages, and so we didn't have
How many of those
podcast
pages were,
of recording, but we have thousands of documents proving and showing that he did this. But I want to
proving-
hear, so I want to kind of stick with the theme first of why do you believe? And Andy, I don't even know that we really know exactly what you believe. So who wants to go first?
Andy should go first.
All right.
should go.
Why and what the heck do you believe, Andy?
What do I believe? Well, I tell you, I've always start this conversation by telling you what I don't believe, which is 99% of religious dogma. I don't believe that the scriptures and the Bible as they're written down are holy. I don't believe that they're the word of God. Because you can look back in history and you can track the changes. You can track, the removal of the apocryphal books is one example. So, about the Gnostic Gospels, Colleen. There's all these other books that used to be in the King James Bible, and they're gone now. Where'd they go? Who removed them? Did God do it? No, man did it. The church did it. Why? There was a lot of inconvenient stories in there, right? So next week, we're going to talk about The Shack, this book you inflicted on me and made me read. And I'm honest to God, I'm only halfway through it. I can't listen to it for more than 15 minutes at a time. And I don't hate it.
Oh my gosh, is it that painful for you to listen to? Is that a truth?
I'm just waiting for it to get to a point. So far he's having a acid trip out in the woods and nothing's happening. So we'll save that.
So funny.
We'll save that for the next conversation. But I'm fully agnostic on the existence of higher powers. I can neither prove nor disprove the existence of a god or gods or even parallel universes inflicting themselves on ours. I don't know. Do I believe that there's something, that there are forces in the universe that we humans do not understand or cannot understand? Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to believe that. How they manifest, what their purpose is, if they even have one, if everything is just random, I can't answer. I don't know. But I do know that the conversation of, do you believe in God? It's a bad question, because all you're trying to do is solidify tribal lines. Am I part of your tribe or am I in somebody else's tribe? Am I a friend or enemy? So you can other me. It's a conversation we can have this 100 different ways about 100 different topics. But do you believe in God? Are you asking me if I'm a Christian like Allie, who believes in Noah's Ark as it was written? And I'm sorry, Allie, that was mean. But
okay.
Or am I, somebody who's spiritual, the woo woo? I don't know. I mean, do I believe there are things in the universe we don't understand? Yes, I do. What those things are, I will wait to see if I'm ever presented with any evidence. I'm sitting here perfectly capable of believing both things. I'm capable of sitting here on the fence and saying that there may be things that we don't understand. Everything may be happening for a reason. Everything may be deterministic. It doesn't look that way to me, but it's possible.
So is it possible that maybe I might be a little right too, that Jesus was the Messiah, that maybe someday you may come to that conclusion?
I sincerely doubt it. And the reason is there is enough evidence that the Jesus story was stacked on top of existing religions And there's nothing particularly special about it.
But we
I
know he
really-
walked the
Go ahead.
earth.
That's
But
going
we
to
know
go
he-
ahead.
But we know he did walk the earth. When you talk about scientific evidence, he did exist on earth.
It's controversial. I don't know that so we know Alexander the Great walked the earth. We know Caesar walked the earth. I mean, there's enough evidence to satisfy me, just me. There's enough evidence to satisfy you that Jesus walked the earth as a man who was also a God. That's fine. I'm good with that. I'm not satisfied with the evidence I've been presented with.
No, but
Okay.
it just seems, I'm sorry, I'm impressed that you've even come that far from no, there's nothing to there could be possibly something. That's interesting to me.
I never said no, there's nothing.
Well, we did cast you as the atheist, not
Yes.
agnostic this entire time. So that's interesting. And I apologize for casting you in that
No.
light. If it wasn't accurate.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Everybody is agnostic. There's no such thing as a real atheist. There's no such thing. They don't exist. A real atheism is a religion, just like Christianity. So if you are truly an atheist, that means you're adhering, in my mind, and I've done more thinking than reading about this. So somebody could give me new information that would change my mind. But the people that I've met that are like, nope, God's not real. It's all fake. It's all stupid. You're an idiot. Shut up. Those people are just believing a different set of dogmatic beliefs. They're hardcore believers in the opposite or the non-existence of a God. I'm saying I don't have enough evidence either way.
So do you believe that there's enough evidence that Jesus as a man walked this earth and lived on earth?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's controversial. I think there may have been a Jewish rabbi named Jesus or something like that. And he may have had an influential ministry. He may have, built a little following at that time. And then his story got taken up and he got co-opted and used hundreds of years later by the church that they built in his name. I don't know whether he even needs to be real or not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he was a real man that walked the earth. It does not matter to me at all.
How about Moses, Isaiah?
Again, possibly they were real. It doesn't matter.
So the next step would be then, if they did walk the earth, let's just say,
yeah,
something divine happened. And maybe you wouldn't consider it divine, but I wonder if something like really big happened that was divine, an epiphany, where you wouldn't look at it as so factual anymore. And maybe all of a sudden you would have faith.
So if I had an experience similar to Colleen, where to my perception, this undeniable sign occurred that was outside of my control, that it just appeared in my life, I would not attribute that to Jesus of Nazareth. I would not attribute it to the Catholic version of God or angels or saints or anything like that. I just wouldn't. It wouldn't occur to me that all of a sudden now I'm going to join your tribe and believe the way you believe. That's not where my head would go.
Mm-hmm. But I wonder if something undeniable could happen. For example, can I share for a moment?
Yes.
I don't know if I read the book Heaven is for Real, and then I saw the movie. And it's just about this little boy while he's on the table, I think being worked on for appendicitis or something, maybe 3-4 years old. He thinks he dies and goes to heaven and comes back, tells the family who he saw, what they looked like, etc., including what he thought to be Jesus. So his dad goes on to the computer, he goes through 8 million different Jesus pictures. And the little boy says, that one. And the father's looking at it, and it's a blonde man with blue eyes. And, Jesus, we just don't imagine him because of, where he lived and during that time, etc. Come to find out, it was a little girl who painted the picture and maybe, I can't remember the country, but Czechoslovakia, maybe the Ukraine, maybe Poland, can't remember. Child was an atheist. Her parents didn't believe in anything, didn't teach her anything about anything. And she just painted this beautiful picture. And the next thing you know, she believes that it was Jesus. And the little boy said that's exactly what Jesus looked like in heaven.
There's
And
some incredible pieces of the story. That girl was like 8 years old, and she kept, the portraits are like of a trained, skilled artist.
Right. So something like that to me, I said, wow, I think that little boy did see Jesus up in heaven, and now the little girl and her family have faith as well. So God divinely gave her that image of Jesus, and maybe just for that little boy to go on the computer to say, that's what he looks like. So now his family believes he really did maybe go to heaven while he was, and it's a long story, but to me, instances like that, that's what increases my faith and makes it stronger. And I just wonder, Andy, if something like that ever happened to you, if you indeed may, come around a little bit, whether
Here's
it's
why.
Muslim,
Here's
Buddhist.
why I probably won't. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say whether it's Christianity or not.
So are you asking me if an epiphany is possible where I would believe that a power greater than myself is intervening in my life?
Well, you already said that you do believe there could be a power as an agnostic in some areas. So yeah, could there be a time in your life where you just can't explain it and say, wow, it has to be divine. There has to be something at work here.
So I'm just trying to understand what you're asking me.
Would you believe it, or would your skepticism get in the, like, is there something big enough, do you believe, that could change what you believe today, that could bring you to believing in Jesus?
All right. So a few years ago, I watched a movie called Napoleon Dynamite. And
Where's this going?
There's a scene early. No, this is directly to your point. There's a scene early in the movie where he's drawing a picture, and the girl asks him, or I don't know if it's Pedro or the other one asks him, so what's that? He says, it's a liger. It's pretty much my favorite animal, known for its magic powers, whatever. And so I'm like, what the fuck is a liger? I don't know what that's got to be. Like, I thought it was hilarious. Like, it was a funny scene, right? Just because he's super funny when he talks. So I go and I look it up, and damn it, wouldn't you know it, there are such things as ligers. And then I saw one with my own eyes. I'm like, I now believe in ligers because I saw one. So yeah, that's possible.
Oh, that's awesome, Andy. Thanks for sharing that.
You
That's
think
really
it's
great.
you don't see how what I just said is in any way related to what you said, to what you asked?
Yeah, I do actually, because I know what you're saying, but for me, I see there's always a possibility for something to happen in your life to maybe say, this could be real, like the liger.
So if somebody showed me a liger, I would believe in ligers. I'd say that's not a lion and it's not a tiger. It appears to be both. Holy crap, ligers are real. Sure. So
if Jesus showed up behind you in your studio right now, yep, and said, Andy, here I am, believe in me, would you say, hey, Jesus was here, maybe he exists? Or would you say, man, I should stay off the pot brownies?
It would depend. I guess it would depend how many pot brownies I had eaten before that happened. And then I might attribute it to, but there's a whole world that you guys may or may not be aware of. And in fact, we were talking about Joe Rogan. If you listen to Rogan long enough, you'll hear the conversation around DMT and hallucinogens, mushrooms, and all these substances that people take, and then they go to other places. And those places appear to be very, very real. And this is something that's been practiced throughout human history, right? There's a lot of evidence that humans used hallucinogens to have religious experiences for, tens of thousands of years, who knows how long. There's pictures of um, you know, very suggestive pictures in the pyramids and places like, South America. There's all kinds of depictions of medicine men or magic, shaman type people with little bags, and maybe they're bringing the medicine, you know what I mean? So it would depend. If I ate a whole shitload of pot brownies and then saw Jesus, it might change me.
Well, let me
but
ask
but I
you.
start but let me finish. But would that cause me to start believing that Saint Augustine of Hippo was exactly right when he put down what was in the Bible? No, it wouldn't even come close. It wouldn't matter to me at all what that was.
But it's a start.
It's a start in
There-
what, Allie? It's a start towards what? What exactly do you hear me saying?
Well, if indeed that did happen, it would be a start toward a relationship, possibly with something other than yourself, something greater than you, that you may begin to explore. And so there's always that possibility that you could change from being an agnostic to a believer in something other than Andy.
So because you guys have already subscribed to a set of beliefs, right? You have the explanation for everything. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. You have decided what sorry, the dog. You guys already know the alpha, the omega, and everything in between, of what's responsible for everything you see and touch and feel. Because you guys live in that world already, you can't see what it's like to be in the middle, and how much more to me, I've been both. Where I am now, to me, is so much more enlightening and interesting than subscribing to a strict set of dogmatic beliefs written down by people. The universe is so much more interesting than the Christian story makes it out to be. That's just my opinion.
I think there's still, just as a Christian, as a Catholic, I think there's so much that we don't know. There's so much mystery that lies ahead of us. So that's a piece that I find interesting. But I also don't think, like, and I guess this is where do I think that maybe something in my beliefs could be disproved? Potentially. But as far as God and Jesus, I'm there. I would doubt that could be upturned. How about you, Allie?
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I mean, I look at you, Andy, as like, I'll believe it when I see it kind of guy. And I respect that tremendously. And I was kind of the same in the beginning as well. And of course, like, I can tell you about the dreams or the experiences I've had, the miracles and things that make me believe that the word of God is accurate. And you could probably dispel all of those with other reasons. So I'm like you, Colleen, that I know that I know that I know that I know. However, there are some things that I still can't explain. And actually, there are some things that I didn't do before that I do now. Like I never prayed to Mary. All of a sudden, I find myself talking to Mary, where before I didn't.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
No, I'm curious what changed that.
I can edit that part out if you want me to.
Stop.
No, it's okay. And originally I was Catholic, the first 18 years of my life, prayed to Mary all the time. And then when I became Protestant, I searched the scriptures about the saints and Mary, and I was like, do I still pray to them or don't I? And I found this one scripture in Timothy that says, Jesus is the only intercedent between us and God. So then I decided I'm just going straight to Jesus. I'm not going to go to the saints anymore, or Mary anymore. And then years later, something happened in my family, something very catastrophic with my children. And someone said to me, Allie, why don't you pray to Mary? She'll go straight to Jesus on your behalf. And I did talk to God. I said, Lord, if you really want me to embrace praying to Mary again, and it wasn't a test for him, it was just me talking to him. I don't try to put stipulations on him, but I said, let me know. Maybe this is the way you can let me know, or let me know another way. And I did. I prayed to Mary and I got my miracle. And from that moment on, I just decided that she's going to be a part of. I don't believe Mary does the miracle. I believe that she did intervene on my behalf to her son. And there is something special about her, like I used to believe when I was Catholic. So I'm kind of now this Christian who does go by the Bible, but also has a little bit of Catholic, a little bit of Protestant, maybe, you know what I mean? And I do my own Christian thing.
Andy, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. Andy, to quote you, can I pick on you a little bit?
I
Don't
hope so.
pick on Andy.
It's okay for him to pick on us.
No, that's what I'm here for. I was really expecting you guys to be much meaner.
So
No,
I
because
do
we
have a question.
respect you.
Yeah, I do have a question for you, Andy. So let's say a liger was hanging out in your driveway and you weren't home, but 1,000 people wrote a letter and put it in your mailbox and said, "Hey, Andy, I drove by your house today and there was this liger hanging out eating bananas," or whatever, right? Would you believe the letter?
How did you know that's the preferred food of the liger? They're vegetarians.
Would you believe the letters, the 1,000 letters in your mailbox? Would you believe that the liger was in your driveway eating bananas?
Well, who wrote the letters? 1,000 randos off Twitter, or is it?
I mean, 1,000 people that drove by your house. It could be anyone. I mean, we don't really know who the apostles are, or everyone who wrote these,
Almost certainly
interpretations
the apostles,
of Jesus.
With the exception of Paul, I don't think any of the apostles wrote anything. I could be wrong about that, but I know the oldest letters.
I think you're avoiding the question.
I'm not.
Answer the question. You get 1,000 notes.
Are there pictures of the liger? Are there pictures of the liger?
No, there's no pictures. There's 1,000 different notes with
video.
1,000 different people writing, "Hey, there's a liger in your driveway eating bananas. Do you believe it?"
Well, I probably exist in both worlds where there is and is not a liger potentially in my driveway eating bananas, because I did not. First of all, there's no reason for a liger to be in my driveway. Ligers don't eat bananas. So I probably say, okay, I have to look out for ligers now because there's possibly a liger. It's the same. And that's an interesting point, Colleen, because even though I don't subscribe to Christian or Catholic or Jewish or Buddhist dogmatic practices, I still think it's better to live your life as if you're going to be judged.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow, Andy.
I do. I think most people do. I think that's whether they articulate it or not. I think it's much better to live. And because the truth is you will be judged. And I think I said this in the first podcast, your future will judge you. Your children will judge you.
That's awesome.
That is awesome, Andy. Can I make a prediction?
Oh, please do.
Without offending. So as the Christian, we would say there are no coincidences, that God specifically brought Andy to us to love on him, to pray for him, and God will do the divine one way or the other. And at the end of the day, you're going to be like Paul, who was once Saul, and you're going to fall off that horse someday, and you're going to be the greatest Christian ever. So that's my prediction without trying to offend you. I've seen it happen many, many, many times, and maybe I'm wrong, but just for ha-has, let's just write this date down and see when it actually happens, Colleen. And then you could take us all out for shots, Andy. How's that? I'll baptize you.
Shots will be verboten.
And I'm going to forget that as well. I'll baptize you in my pool.
Shots will be verboten.
Yep. Well, actually, maybe if we give you enough shots, then those pot brownies you were talking about, then you actually might have some kind of epiphany and Jesus is your savior. And then I'll baptize you in the pool.
So
the marketer and capitalist
awesome.
in me is saying, then what will happen of the podcast?
It'll be
start my own.
We'll have to go get another
atheist.
Oh, you could have a future in the Reformed atheist.
Yes.
The Reformed
Yes.
non-believer. That's
That'll be your new calling.
Yeah, that sounds good. The what religious people do, and everybody's religious, right? Everybody thinks religiously, so that's something we haven't really talked about too much. But religious thinking is like a dolphin swimming in water. Humans are just wired to believe, to think in stories. We don't, our humans didn't evolve to think rationally and use logic. That's an effort that has to be made.
Because we're spiritual beings.
Oh yeah. So as now I'm about to sneeze. Shit.
You're
Well,
very
you're
disruptive.
Can I say God bless you?
Yeah, of course. Oh, by the way, I accept all prayers. That's fine. Anybody wants to pray for me? I'm good. Go ahead. I'll take it all.
I love that when you talked about Mary Ellen, you were like, and bless her soul.
I know, me too.
Did you?
Me too, Colleen.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I was so let's not forget that I was raised in a Catholic household. And so these traditions and the vernacular, it sticks. It's like, that's how I grew up. That's how I was raised. That's how I talk. I see no reason to throw it away. I've heard Christopher Hitchens say, Jesus Christ and, God damn it. And I've heard him take the name of the Lord in vain plenty of times, but I've also heard him say things like that, like, oh, bless their souls. It's a little tongue in cheek when he does it. I don't really think too much of it. What I'm saying when I say that is
someone could drop the F-bomb, but when they use the Lord's name in vain, I feel prickles all over my body. I know that's like being raised Catholic but it goes right through me. Even just now when he's telling it.
I'm the same way. My children and other people, they can drop whatever, but when they say Jesus Christ or goddamn, I cringe.
I'll stop watching a show because they say God damn it too often. I'm like, gets me.
Oh, so you can't watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, a great movie, but it was really it disrupts my brain when I hear it for whatever reason.
You've
so
never
Andy,
seen that show?
You were talking about, I want to hear what you were talking about with stories. Like people come up with stories.
Well, no, humans think in stories. They think in narratives. So what happens is, and this is the thing that I'm always on the lookout for with myself. We talked a little bit about confirmation bias a couple of weeks ago. You have you have a desired outcome, and the tendency for all people is you've got this is what I want to be true. This is what I want the truth to be. What everyone does is they just make the facts fit their desired outcome. This is a common thing, and it's very hard to guard against. It's called confirmation bias. You guys decide that it's Jesus or it's God or it's whatever I've been taught and whatever I believe, and then all these things can happen, and you will find a way to fit them into your story. You'll find where they fit in your narrative, at the same time ignoring anything that can challenge those preconceptions.
Let me on that story, let me tell you something. Let me tell you a story that I like. So when Jesus came back, was resurrected, and he was he said, I use stories when I speak to them, because when they look, they cannot see, and when they listen, they cannot hear or understand. So God's promise came true, just as the prophet Isaiah has said. These people will listen and listen, but never understand. They will look and look, but they will never see. I think confirmation bias goes both ways, right? And Jesus even acknowledges it. I think it's in Matthew. Jesus even acknowledges that we're going to hear those stories, but there's this confirmation bias. No matter how many times we hear it, no matter how many times we say it, there's just this piece of us that cannot believe. And I think what you just said, Andy, is true for all three of us, right? I hear the story, I manipulate it in a way that I want to listen. We see it in leadership, we see it with politics, everything.
But that's what I said. I said everybody does it.
I'm confirming, I'm just confirming that.
Yeah,
And that maybe Jesus was the first to say it.
No, I doubt it.
Allie, what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying that I actually agree with him as well. It's interesting. However, when I was searching, I visited many different churches, many different denominations, besides Christian ones, Buddhist, Jewish, you name it. I was searching, and I allowed the universe, God, whatever you want to say, to show me where it wanted me. And ultimately it was a Christian place, but I had my doubts, and things happened that, like, for example, my daughter, she was maybe 6 years old. We were in a hotel. I don't know if I shared the story before. My whole family was in the hotel, and all of a sudden I sat up because I heard her speaking, and I was like, what is she saying? She was actually speaking in tongues in her sleep. And I know that could be another show for another day.
I do think we need to do a show about the occult and supernatural and kind of,
Sure.
there's some things that, like mystics.
But just things like that.
Right. How does that happen?
Exactly. How does that happen? And for me, it just proved that was written in the scriptures, and my daughter's doing it. So there's some truth there. So I could still, as you say, have confirmation bias and pertain it to that, but there was no other faith to pertain that to. I felt it was God strengthening my faith, saying, see, this is what you're reading. It is real. I mean, that was the most powerful thing when it happened.
Wow. Hey, Andy, you were I don't want to, it's one of those things, I don't want to leave the conversation, but I think we probably should talk about these stories a little bit more. Like, you had mentioned that you believe these ancient stories like Buddha and Horus are just regurgitated stories or reiterated stories that aren't true. Give me your perception on that.
What I was starting to say last week was and I'm not a historian or a scholar, but what it seems to be very evident to me is that the Jesus story, as it is told, most of the important points, born of a virgin, around the time of the winter solstice, especially was murdered and then resurrected. There are dozens of ancient religions with exact same storyline. So if you put up a storyboard on the wall, it's like, okay, here he's born, it's a winter solstice, here he's killed, here he's resurrected. That story repeats itself. And Christian apologists would say, well, yes, but, I don't know what arguments you guys might have, but the arguments that I've read against, like, saying, well, yeah, but Jesus was the right one. They kept doing it until they got it right when Jesus came along. So if you believe Jesus is God, then there's nothing anyone's going to do to it's not going to matter to you that this same story was told for thousands of years before Jesus was allegedly born.
At first, a Christian apologists, is that
Christian
a thing?
Apologists? Yeah, C.S. Lewis, Justin the Martyr.
Well, are they really called apologists? I've never heard that term.
They are. They're Christian. So when someone is challenging an aspect of scripture or what have you, there are writers throughout history that are known as Christian apologists. So
I thought they were called historians.
No, they're making the case for Christianity as truth. They're making the case for their version of reality as truth.
I never heard that term.
Well, C.S. Lewis became a Christian while writing Narnia. He became a Christian.
I think he was always a Christian. I don't know if he.
Okay.
He was definitely the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a perfect allegory for the Jesus story. Like, he just
absolutely
rewrote it.
Yeah, or he strengthened his faith. But I thought I read he became a Christian actually while writing that. But we'll look that up.
It might be that he had an epiphany while he was being shelled during World War I. I'm not sure, but he's a famous Christian apologist. That's how you would see him described in critiques or what have you. But his arguments, to me, they're not the argument that all these other you can't deny, if you look into this stuff, you cannot deny that there were, call them cults or religions or whatever you want, there were stories about supernatural or magical beings that existed thousands of years before Jesus that told the same story of birth, execution, and rebirth again and again and again.
So so there are stories, and it's kind of interesting when you look this up. You know, you talk, like Jesus told us when he was resurrected, go back to the Old Testament. Here we are, like, this is preparing you for me. These are like, this is what the Old Testament told you was going to happen. And here I am living that truth today. God has been preparing you for my arrival this entire time. But you brought up Horus, and I thought, you know, here's this interesting conversation, because I'm like, really, did this happen? And whether this is God's preparation for the coming of the Messiah or not, I think there's some kind of interesting pieces in this argument. So like Horus in particular was said he was born of the Virgin Mary. Well, you know, based on, we have murals, and then there's some textual evidence. The picture of his mother, her name was Isis, and I don't even know how it transferred to Mary, and like in these arguments, but her name is Isis. She hovered over an erect penis. There's nothing, maybe she was a virgin, but the hovering over the penis kind
It's
of
what the Mormons call soaking.
And just to give our listeners, we're talking about an Egyptian god here.
Yes.
Okay.
Just
Yes, a totally fake made up god. Yes.
Well, we don't know. Do we know? Like,
no, I don't know. I mean,
he was eagle and something else, right?
Yeah, falcon.
He was a falcon, and he was also a man. Yeah, the Horus may or may not, you know, Jesus' story may or may not be layered over the Horus story. I would think the Horus story wouldn't have been as well known in Judea around the time of Jesus's birth. I would think that the Greek stories would be probably more prevalent. Even the Jewish, you know, the Hebrew story about Moses would have been much more likely to be known. I think some of the other aspects of the other religions, the Buddha one, the Horus one, maybe Osiris was executed or killed by his brother. That's the Lion King story right there.
They all are kind of the Lion King story.
Well,
really.
So that's the point that I'm trying to make.
I had no idea.
Oh God, every Disney movie, Disney movie is pretty much a biblical story retold, except for Frozen, which is a piece of shit.
I would ask your daughter to agree or disagree with you on that comment.
I tried really hard. I watched it with her for the first time. Like, I didn't know Frozen was a piece of shit until I watched it. And she watched it with me. She was little, maybe she was 4 or 5, but she didn't jump on that bandwagon. Like, I was so proud of her after I watched it, and I was like, this is a piece of garbage. And she could see it was propaganda. It wasn't a real, like, The Lion King is an awesome story. You know, The Lion King is like, that's a tried and true hero's journey. It's the retelling of Seth and Osiris and Horus and all this, you know.
I've actually done sermons on The Lion King, just quickly, just to say that, you know, here is a young Simba in the wilderness, lost, depressed. His father, Mufasa, you know, who was murdered, is in the sky, and he says, remember who you are. You are the son of a king like Christ. And he goes back, he defeats the enemy, Satan, and he's king of the promised land again. So I just wanted to share that a little bit with you.
Wow, I did not connect. So did you guys watch King Richard, this movie that's up for, I think Will Smith is up for an Oscar on this one, right? King Richard is about Venus and Serena Williams' story and the father.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. But one of the things that he does is every time their egos get in front of them, he makes them watch Cinderella again, over and over and over and over and over again. Oh gosh,
the new Cinderella? The new Cinderella with Lily James.
No, we did this as they were children. No, I haven't seen
Wow.
that. No, as
like
children, every time their egos got in front of them, he's like, remember where you came from. And he, there's no place for this. There's no place, I guess maybe don't become the evil stepsisters in this story. He had a vision, right? The father, Richard, had a vision, and whether or not some people say that the movie was like portrayed a nicer version of the man, I don't know. I don't know him, but he didn't know how to play tennis. He had a vision for his children being these super athletes, and he made his vision like what a story of perseverance and vision and focus. But he learned to play tennis by reading how to play tennis. It just is mind-blowing to me. You can teach kids to be that good by reading a book.
Look at Tiger Woods' dad. He didn't read, he played, but still, who knew? It's like all these children are prodigies, but how do you know to pick the ice skates? How do you know to pick tennis? It's interesting. And again, for me, that would be something divine that comes in and, expresses it. And
they're led by their fathers, right? Like, which I think is interesting. You look at the parents' influence on that child. I look at Aislinn. My daughter she's an entrepreneur. I don't know if I want her to be an entrepreneur, but whether I like it or not, she's already looking at training horses and building a business. I'm like, oh, where did that come? Just go to college and have some fun, and
college will
she's
be
like,
there.
no,
Let her
I'm going to build this. What?
Let her try. College will be there. That irritates me that people think they have to go to college after high school. It just irritates me.
Yeah, I think she's chosen a smart path. She's going to go take some business classes at the community college and prepare herself for college, but she really doesn't know where she wants to go yet. And I'm telling you, you can't buy passion. You can't make passion. You can't build it. Passion is something that comes from within.
But there's something to be said. There were studies done about how children perceive God, and especially children look to their parents. If they have good parents, they perceive God as a good God. If they don't have the greatest parents, they perceive God, especially little girls, the way they perceive their daddy. That's how they will perceive God for them. So it's very interesting.
I think that's an interesting point, Allie, because there's this whole thing about if someone has a good father, like in referencing God as the father, like how they connect. I think, were you saying that to me?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just trying to say now. I probably didn't say it well enough, but it's interesting. When you look at people sometime, why they have the relationship they do with God, how were their own parents to them? If their own parents weren't loving, how could they imagine that, someone else would be?
So you're saying your imagination is the way you imagine God is limited by the scope of your imagination.
It's always going to be limited because he's God and we don't have that same intellect, power, etc. But, again, there's been studies done about people and how they view God. And a lot of it has to do with how their own parents treated them.
I think as you read The Shack, and we talk about The Shack next week, that's a big element of it.
Yeah, I'm wondering if 1,000 years from now, The Shack will just be added to the Bible.
No,
well, that's what it's. So I'm only halfway through it, but I'm saying, okay, this guy is rewriting, doing a very subtle job of rewriting the Gospels. That's what he's doing.
Let's not get it. We have to save this for next week because there's
I have to
so
I have
much
to finish
there.
it. I have to finish it, but I have some ulterior motives, I think.
You think?
Here. Yeah.
Well, I just want to put out there, I did interview the author. So that'll be interesting to discuss as well.
Oh.
I will be very interested to hear that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So in The Shack, they talk about smells, or they didn't talk about smells. I always think about smells because the church has a very there is a smell when it brings peace to me, like the candles, the smell. Do you have a smell that you associate with, and I guess not with God for you, Andy, but is there a smell that kind of brings you to a different place Oh God, that's such a stupid question after the pot brownie
No, it's
question.
not actually. I mean, if I can
Yes,
answer
the smell of
quick.
pot brownies. Yes.
Sorry, Allie, go ahead.
No, I can say that there's been times in church over the last 30 years where there wasn't a plug-in in the wall that was making a smell. And all of a sudden, this sweet smell would come over the entire church. And we all attributed it to the sweet smell of the Holy Spirit moving. So I've experienced things like that.
Is there a smell now, like, that reminds you of God besides that one? Or is there, like, how else does God affect your senses, I guess is a better question.
Oh, I mean, for me, all of my senses, I think I've shared with you guys before, whatever I see, whatever I hear, whatever I feel in my heart, whatever I sense in my mind, I believe, like I said earlier, everything is spiritual. We are spiritual beings. And there's doctors all over the world who say we need to be physically, emotionally, and spiritually in check. If one thing's out of order, the other things may be out of order. So for me, all of my senses I'm that girl, my kids will make fun of me, like, take a screw. And you know how there's like an X on the screw? I'll flip it around and be like, oh, there's a cross on the screw. My kids are like, you'll find Jesus in anything and everything. So with my senses, I'm always looking to see God in things because he is in everything.
That is beautiful.
That is
beautiful.
confirmation bias in action. In action. No, it really is. And I'm not saying it as a criticism, but that's one of the things I became aware of. That's confirmation bias. You see whatever you want to see in everything to get to the place you want to get to. And that's okay.
But it didn't start out that way. There was so much evidence, again, like what the instance just sharing earlier about my daughter that said to me, wow, there is speaking in tongues. Holy cow, I just experienced it. And it, as I said, it increased my faith. So there's so many instances of that, like seeing what I consider to be healings and, things like that. So I hear what you're saying, but I feel like I had the evidence to give me that confirmation bias.
Yeah. And what you're describing as evidence, a person who's follows Hinduism would be like, what? Like,
I hear you.
Not evidence of anything. So I don't, we could argue about whether it's evidence or not. It's evidence that fits your particular story. It's evidence that adds weight to your belief. And that's what we all do all day, every day.
So Andy, I was in Syracuse, New York. I'll never forget this. And as I said, I can't go to the desert by myself, right? I need people. I'm a true extrovert. So I was in Syracuse, New York, and I am telling you, I don't think at any point in my life I was so lonely. I was there on business. I really had nobody to connect with. I was in this place, and I was in this store called Bonton's, and I was just wandering aimlessly, kind of, what am I going to do? I have to kill like 4 hours. What am I going to do? And all of a sudden, the smell of my grandmother's perfume, she had passed away. She had this very unique smell. And since that day, I've never smelt it again. But I remember she had these soaps in her drawer and they always just smelled of her. And it was my happy place. And this smell, and it almost took me off my feet. And I started kind of looking around Bonton, like, who is this person that has that smell? I started smelling bottles, everything. And then once I was like distracted and out of my loneliness and in this place with my grandmother and these wonderful family memories, the smell was gone and I couldn't find it. And I think there's, like, to me, that was, the smell kind of brought me somewhere else.
I love that.
There's tons of studies that have been done saying, smell is our sense that is most closely linked to memory. So, if you imagine hunter-gatherers walking around hundreds of thousands of years ago, you need all your senses. If you guys have ever spent any time, out in the wilderness, like really out there, not glamping, but actually out there in the woods, the longer you're out there, the thing you notice the most is how your senses, almost within a couple of days, they start to sharpen up. So you hear differently, you see differently, you start to, your visual perception is your contrast vision gets better. Your sense of smell gets immeasurably better. You know, we live in cities and we live in congested places and we live with bad air and all kinds of noise constantly. So we just get dulled. But go spend a week in the woods, like where there's no light.
So
And
I'm
there's
going to
no
go
nothing
out on a
man-made.
limb. I'm going to go out on a limb here, Andy, and say the smell of a campfire brings you somewhere else.
It brings me somewhere. Yeah, I have a couple though. Your grandmother's perfume is one, because man, we used to have some good times. But no, the I love the look. I wish people could see the look on your face right now.
Who's mine or Allie? We're both. I think we both have the same expression, right? We're like, oh.
It's a shame we're not going to put the video out because that was priceless. No, my grandmother used to live in a second floor apartment, and the downstairs was this like garagey basement thing. It was like a half finished 2-car garage, and she had a huge mint patch out in the front of her apartment. She used to cut that mint and she would hang it in the basement, and it's got a very distinct smell. So you'd walk in the house immediately, you would smell that, and then you'd always smell food right after that. And she was Lebanese, so you know those smells take me places. The smell of onions frying in butter is about the best thing I could think of. And a single malt Highland Scotch, that's another one.
Andy, you're a good cook, so I'm not surprised at all that, I mean, you always have surprised me with your culinary
It's
gifts.
a hobby. It's a hobby.
Yeah.
I learned something new yesterday. I made goat cheese balls, deep fried. I deep fried some goat cheese. I rolled them in, I dredged them in flour, dipped them in egg, and then rolled them in panko, and then I flash fried them, and yeah, it's like candy.
You throw some craisins in there, and maybe some balsamic afterwards.
And we had them with Caesar salad.
I was thinking like with a fig kind of compote on top. And
Yeah, we should do a food show.
Yeah, I like your idea. Maybe do it with Brussels sprouts and chopped up bacon on the top too, with some honey.
With the
Hey,
Brussels
once
sprouts.
we convert Andy to Catholicism, then we'll just have to, this can be, you can say that here, it can be, you can cook that here.
It would be a revert, not a convert.
A revert.
Well, the discussion last week about the Brazilian whatever, you'd be a perfect.
Oh, I have an update on that.
What?
So did you guys hear? I cannot remember her name. I saw a clip of this. There's this Brazilian singer, influencer, singer, I'm not sure, entertainer. And she recently went to the hospital.
I don't think I want to know.
I was
You didn't
thinking
hear?
the same thing. Do I follow up with a question?
I think the word will be stuck, correct? That'll be like the
Well, no. So she went to the hospital with acute abdominal pain. She had gas pains, I guess, that were so severe that they had to take her to the hospital. I'm not sure how they actually extracted the source of the problem. I'm hoping they filmed it because it would be quite lucrative. She's very beautiful. But
Only if the doctor was a man.
but she told the story. She said she was too embarrassed around. She has a new boyfriend, and she was too embarrassed to fart in front of her new boyfriend. So she held it in for too long and ended up in the hospital. She says, I wish I had just farted because it would have been a lot less embarrassing than this.
Okay. New relationships. Allie, you have one.
Yes,
Andy and I have been in relationships for a very long time. But what's that thing that you won't do in front of a new, like, will you fart in front of, God, I hate to even say that word. I can't believe it sounds so strange coming out of my mouth.
Coarse. It's very coarse.
Well, I'll drop the F-bomb, but that F word is like so offensive. I have some weird standards in my life. I'm sorry. So are there things that you won't do in a new relationship, and how long do you wait to do them?
I think it depends. I mean, no, I don't want to pass gas in front of anybody. I don't want to blow up their toilet and, they got to go in there afterwards, But I think after time, it's inevitable. We just have to. So no, I wouldn't do that in the beginning.
my husband, like, I think we were together, like, kind of, I think we were married maybe a week before he just like went into the bathroom with me and, dropped the kids off at the pool. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I don't
A
know if I
week?
want to be part of this.
Did you
But
say a week?
we had been married probably a week, and he just, that was okay. We're married. He opened the door, went in, he had to drop the kids off at the pool and sat down next to me. And I was like,
So he had never done that before. You were
no.
dating for a while.
But flatulence, yes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
dropping the kids off in the pool. But then he had this weird standard. He's going to kill me for saying this. He has this weird standard. I
You
can't
shouldn't
watch
say
him
this.
wipe. Even to this day, we've been married. It'll be 7 years next month. He can poop in front of me, but don't watch him wipe.
So that's interesting because I was married for 29 years and together for 34. But we started when we were 18. So I think there was always passing gas from the beginning and me always walking in the bathroom. But I know some couples to this day who lock the bathroom. They're like, you're not coming in. There's certain boundaries. They're just like, I guess everybody's different.
Do you have boundaries, Andy?
Yeah, great question. I do. And so here you go. I'm looking at the clock and we've been going over an hour, and we need to, I think we could pick this up at another time. So anyway, thank you everybody for listening. This has been the You Can Say That Here podcast, episode 3. We are grateful for each and every one of you. If you're still listening, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and please listen again next week when we talk about the shack and other fun religious and esoteric topics. New episodes release every Wednesday until further notice. So thanks again, and take care.
You can say that here.